Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Mayersky. I'm the Executive Director of Admissions here at Wilkes. We're going to give some people a few moments to join our session. And then once we have everyone joining us, we'll get started. So please sit tight for a few seconds and then we'll get started. Thank you. Okay. Hello, everyone. Once again, I'm Chris Mayersky, the Executive Director of Undergraduate Admissions here at Wilkes. I have joining me today is Jane DeSoy, our Executive Director of Student Financial Services, as well as Amy Turkowski, our Assistant Director of Student Financial Services. They're going to spend a lot of their time talking to you about financing your education at Wilkes. I do want to let you know that there is a question and answer tool. So if you do have questions throughout the session, please use that tool and we'll facilitate those questions. We'll answer them either live on our session or we'll respond to you directly to answer those questions. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the torch over to Jane and Amy, and they're going to talk to you about financial aid at Wilkes.
Thank you, Chris. First off, I want to add my welcome to those that you've already heard throughout the course of the day and the week. I hope you're enjoying the session so far, and hope equally that you'll enjoy this Financing Your Wilkes Education session. So I realize that financial aid is not the most exciting topic in the world, but I understand also that those of you who are incoming students and their parents are probably dreaming in dollar signs. So I think it's a topic that's well worth the 45 minutes or so that we'll spend on it. I hope you'll agree. So Amy, if you'd like to begin our PowerPoint, that would be excellent. What I'd like to do as a beginning, as a prelude, is give you kind of a little bit of background relative to what has happened already so far. I know that because we were in a position as early as December to begin processing financial aid notifications, our financial aid award letters, this may be old news for many of you, for most of you actually, but because some of you have gotten your award letter so long ago, I'd just like to give a very brief reminder, brief lesson on what happened with your award letter, and maybe describe just again briefly its contents, and then we'll get to the nitty-gritty of this conversation. When we prepare a financial aid award letter for students, we go into this entire process with the assumption that you know absolutely nothing about financial aid. Now, that may not necessarily be the case. You may have older siblings who've gone through the process. Maybe even your parents have gone through the financial aid process. But we understand that because a family's worst nightmare is the fear that they will miss out on a source of financial aid because either they didn't know that there was an application, they didn't know there was a deadline, perhaps they didn't even know that the financial aid source existed in the first place. Now, to dispel that worry from especially those who are applying on behalf of their first son or daughter going to college, know that at Wilkes, that is absolutely not a possibility. If a student completes a free application for federal student aid, they will have satisfied the requirement for receipt of any kind of financial aid that Wilkes itself administers. Now, in this presentation, I'm not going to belabor the individual sources of aid. You can certainly read about those multiple sources, the magnitude of sources on the university's website. But just if you can understand the basics of the award at the onset, that would be very helpful. So the financial aid award letter provides you, Amy, if you could flick ahead, that would be great. With first off, a summary of the outright grant sources that you can expect. Grants and scholarships are synonymous with free money. So obviously, when we do our review, grants and scholarships are the first type of financial aid on which we focus. The scholarship evaluation, you may recall, is actually done at the same time that an admissions evaluation is done. So at the same time that we're congratulating you wholeheartedly on your admissions to the university, we're also letting you know that because you've been such a great student for all 12 years of your academic career, this is the type of academic award that you can expect. In addition to the scholarships and grants that we'll list on the award letter from the university itself, at the time that we generate the award letter, we are in a good position to provide you with some estimates of what federal and state grant assistance will be. So we will list those on your award letter in the form of what's called a federal Pell Grant and Pennsylvania State Grant for those of you who are Pennsylvania residents. For those of you who are not Pennsylvania residents, it's very unlikely that you'll qualify for state aid from any state. Obviously not from Pennsylvania because you don't reside in the state. And there are so few states that allow their students to take state grant money and study at a state other than the home state. That being the case, you may have been pleasantly surprised to see on your award letter as a non-Pennsylvania resident that you received a $1,000 non-PA resident grant, $2,000 non-PA resident grant, pardon me, which is our way of compensating as best we can for the fact that you will not get state grant money from any other source. Next form of financial aid after we've exhausted all opportunities for scholarships and grants is loan assistance. There are several types of student loans. The only one that we will list on a student's financial aid award letter is the most common. It's the type of loan called a federal direct loan that the student, him or herself, can pursue on their own behalf or receive on their own behalf. Now, the types of direct loans are broken into two. Federal subsidized direct loan means that the loan is borrowed now, but repayment is free and clear until 6 months after the student graduates, withdraws, or drops to less than half-time status. In addition to the subsidized federal loan, we also will list, if a student qualifies, unsubsidized loan money. The difference between the subsidized and unsubsidized is the fact that on the unsubsidized portion, interest does begin to accumulate while the student is enrolled in school. Now, ultimately, the student has the opportunity to either tell us that they want to pay that interest on a quarterly basis or allow the federal government to do what's called capitalize the interest, which means instead of billing the family every 3 months for an interest payment, they will tack that interest charge onto the loan itself, which is actually a horrible idea, but something that you can very definitely discuss with your financial services counselor, what that may mean to you for 5, 6 years down the road in your career. So obviously, repayment is required on the federal subsidized and unsubsidized direct loan. Next program that we will look at, if you could take a flick there. Thank you. If a student meets the eligibility criteria for a job on campus, basically, we will automatically evaluate eligibility for a federal work-study job. These are positions mostly on campus through which a student can earn basically spending money if they'd like. It is not necessarily reserved for educational expenses, meaning you're not required to turn those earnings over into balances to apply to your student account. Rather, when a student is offered a work-study job and they actually work some hours at the university, we will pay them directly by check, and they decide how to use that check. Now, obviously, if they want to use it to pay down their tuition, that is their prerogative, and obviously our student accounts, our billing office is very happy when students do that, but it is certainly not a requirement. At some point during the summer, you will get notification from the individual who actually administers our work-study program that the listing of work-study jobs available is on the student portal, where you can review the jobs, the requirements, salaries, etc. Okay. Next thing that we'll review with you, and this is an important one and probably the gist, this is the meat of our conversation today. You may recall when you completed your free application for federal student aid for the upcoming academic year, the income information that was requested on that application went all the way back to 2018. So things like adjusted gross income from 2018, federal income tax paid from 2018, we know that a whole heck of a lot, especially in the current environment of the universe, that a whole lot can happen between the time that a family submits their 1040 form from 2018 and that student walks through the door and attends their first class, it moves into the residence hall, all of those kinds of happy things. A lot can certainly happen relative to finance. Now, this obviously is even more true today than it has been, at least in my history, and I've been in financial aid for a great many years. Know that even though initially students' financial aid eligibility was based on that actual 2018 income, if there are circumstances that are described in this slide that happen to the family, basically anything that adversely impacts the family's ability to pay educational expenses, this needs to trigger a direct call to your student financial aid counselor. Now, obviously, the more common reasons that a family reports that there's been a change is loss of employment, reduction in taxable income, or loss of untaxed income. If the families, if the parents suffer a change in marital status, that also is a reason that the student needs to request a special circumstance form. If a parent were to pass away, something that's not clearly obvious on the free application for federal student aid is if the family has exorbitant out-of-pocket medical and dental bills. That is a basis for notification to the Student Financial Services Office. There is a mechanism in place through which we have the authority, the professional judgment ability to go into a family's FAFSA and essentially replace all of 2018 income information with information that you provide us that gives us a better idea of what the family's financial resources are, what the family's financial situation is. So if you take nothing from this presentation, plant in the back of your brain that there is this formal process in place that allows us to collect new information when 2018 information is not a good indicator of what the current situation is. Now, it is a question of you actually contacting the financial aid office. One, obviously, there's no way that we could know that there's been some change in family finances. And two, a very brief conversation with your financial aid counselor will give us the opportunity to identify if any of these special circumstances actually do apply to you, or if you have some other special circumstance that you want to discuss with us that we can tell you definitively, yes, this could impact your aid, or no, it will not. When we do our reevaluation of eligibility based on the submission of a special circumstance form, much like we did on the front end by assuming that you know nothing about eligibility, we likewise will do it on the back end. And again, attack the process as if we're seeing your application for the very first time. And basically, we will make a review of every source of financial aid for which you'll qualify, a reevaluation of eligibility, with the exception of the Pennsylvania State Grant Program. The state of Pennsylvania requires that the family submit a special form to them. They reserve the right to do their own evaluation of eligibility when special circumstances arise. Excellent. I want to talk briefly about interest rates. We've already talked a little bit about the federal direct loan, what it is exactly. What I'd like to delve into a little bit now are the other options that are open to families, and even elaborate a bit on the federal direct loan. Now, the federal government did us a great service roughly 3 weeks ago. The federal interest rates for both the subsidized and unsubsidized federal direct loan and a program that I'll talk about very briefly called the PLUS loan are typically set on July 1st of a year. Now, given the circumstances, again, for obvious reasons with everything that's going on, the federal government has announced the interest rates early, and they have done us a huge, huge service. The federal direct subsidized and unsubsidized loan interest rate for any loan that's dispersed on or after July 1st, and that obviously would be the rate that would be applicable to an incoming freshman, is 2.75. That interest rate for the current year, pre-July 1st, is 4.53. So you can see how dramatic a change there's been, what a shift there has been in the subsidized and unsubsidized interest rate. There is what's called an origination fee. Now, there's much debate among the financial aid community where the federal government gets this hokey origination fee number. Right now, it's 1.059%, which means that on the front end, when a student does get their federal direct loan, which incidentally carries a $5,500 borrowing limit as a first-year student, $65 as a sophomore student, and $7,500 for the junior and senior year of a student's educational expenses. 1.059% comes off the top, meaning when the loan is actually issued and dispersed directly to the university, no checks pass hands, it's all electronic transfer. That will show up on your account as more like a $5,450 interest loan, $5,450 actual payment to the student's account. Now, process to receive that loan is incredibly simple. A student needs to do two things, both of which can be done at a site called studentloans.gov. The first is to complete a master promissory note. The second is to complete what's called entrance counseling. Now, the master promissory note is a one and done kind of thing, as is the entrance counseling. This is true unless the student ultimately decides to attend graduate school after they've finished their undergraduate degree. Because you are most understandably borrowing money for the very first time, the master promissory note and the entrance counseling will give you a summary of your rights and responsibilities, just so that you'll be a little bit more aware, a little bit better informed as a borrower of what you can expect, not only in the interest rates that we've already talked about, but repayment terms. Once you do complete your degree, what options are open to you for repayment, things like a standard 10-year repayment period or payment that's based on your salary at that point in time, a slew of opportunities and options that'll be available to you as a student loan recipient, ultimately going into repayment. Next kind of loan that families can pursue, if they so choose, is the Federal Direct Parent Plus loan. Now we'll talk interest rate of 5.3% for new loans that are dispersed after July 1st of this year. This is where the interest rate has really, really dropped. Right now, the interest rate is 7.08%. So that's what families are paying now on a Parent Plus loan if they chose to pursue it. But for you lucky incoming freshman parents, the interest rate is now at 5.3%. And as I mentioned, it will be set again every year. The loan, if any, that you pursue, that you borrow as a first-year student or parent of a first-year student, will be locked in for that particular loan. But then as we progress through the ranks, every July 1st, the federal government will tell us what the new and hopefully improved interest rate will be, as it has improved this year. Origination fee on the Parent Plus loan is a little bit hefty in our estimation. That has not changed. It is 4.236%, which means that you will be paying that off the top, that comes off the top of the loan when it's ultimately dispersed. Much like a student needs to complete a master promissory note, the parent likewise must complete a master promissory note at the same site that the student completes their note. So you'll see options as you log into studentloans.gov. Are you a student borrower? Are you a parent borrower, etc.? And obviously, if you're pursuing the Parent Plus loan on behalf of your student, then you are listing parent borrower, and you will complete a master promissory note. There's no entrance counseling involved with the Parent Plus loan, just the master promissory note. Unlike the one and done master promissory note for the student who pursues the federal direct subsidized and unsubsidized loan, Plus loan is an annual application. So that's something that you'll need to decide to do or not to do as your students progress through the ranks. So those are the couple of loan programs. And just to put those interest rates a little bit into perspective, a calculation was done that showed that that reduction in interest rate on the federal direct loan for the student, for every $10,000 that a student borrows, they will save $1,000 if they choose the 10-year standard repayment option. So that's a pretty nice chunk of money. Next opportunity that a family has for payment of their educational expenses. The university does offer a monthly payment plan. And Amy, I believe we have a slide that describes the payment plan. Or maybe I'm making things up. No, we do. Okay, excellent.
It's a little delay.
That's okay. Through the Wilkes payment plan, each and every semester, a family has the opportunity, if they desire, to make 5 equal payments toward the tuition and room and board expenses. The benefit to the university payment plan is the fact that there is no interest charged on the monthly payment plan. There is, however, a pretty modest $25 enrollment fee. The family decides at the beginning or close to the beginning of each semester if they want to participate in the payment plan. What I think is important to mention here is the fact that this monthly payment plan can be used in conjunction with either or both of the student and parent loan programs that we've already discussed. So they're not mutually exclusive. They're not necessarily, unless you want them to be, used in isolation. Families can pursue all 3 options. So let's say, for instance, the family feels that over the course of the 5 months of the fall semester, they could afford $1,000 a month. They could opt into payment of $5,000 through the payment plan, $1,000 a month from August to December, and then use whatever other resources, including either the student loan or the Parent Plus loan or both, to cover remaining charges. So it's a good way to try to reduce the amount of indebtedness. So something that you'll have the opportunity to consider, again, if you'd like, in coordination or conjunction with your student financial services counselor's help. Now, next thing that I'd like to talk about. Excellent. Well, I mentioned from the onset that we go into this entire process with the assumption that you know nothing about eligibility. We do, honestly, evaluate all of the traditional aid sources that we administer. But if a family would like to help themselves, these are a couple options that they may want to consider. Now, Typically, after this presentation, if a student hasn't already heard of FastWeb, it's something that you might want to get on, and you'll probably hate me, and this is why. Let me preface this comment by saying that while we look at all the traditional aid options, families hear that millions of dollars go unclaimed in scholarship assistance every year because really, you don't know how to find them. How do you find these sources of outside scholarship aid? Now, I'll mention that you will most undoubtedly receive offers from companies that are willing to do these scholarship searches on a student's behalf for a fee. And I've seen these fees go as high as $100, that companies are promising X number of leads relative to aid sources in return for this fee. What I would recommend, if you get those offers, either in the mail or email, trash them directly into the trash. We have had absolutely no positive experience with companies who were charging you a fee to help identify outside sources of aid. The first site listed on this slide, fastweb.com, will do just that for you, and it is a free site, and we feel reputable. Through FastWeb, a student completes an online autobiographical sketch that talks about things like where they're from, what their grades are like, what their extracurricular activities are, the kinds of things like ethnic background that may be tied somehow to a scholarship donor. Now, FastWeb will pass the profile against a national database and will give you a printable list of scholarships that either closely match or identically match your profile. Now, here's where the students don't like me so much. It's the student's responsibility to pursue those scholarships, but at least FastWeb tells you where they are, what the filing requirements are, application deadline dates, the average number of awards that are made each year, the average value of those awards. So the student may need to sit down and write that essay or do a little bit extra legwork to actually pursue the scholarships that are outlined in FastWeb, but it is definitely a resource that you should consider, and it's not too late, even if you have not ever heard of FastWeb, much less pursued FastWeb services. It's something that you should consider now. I'll also mention that if you have little or maybe no success with FastWeb as an incoming student, prevail. Continue to use FastWeb throughout the course of your college career. There are, for instance, some scholarships embedded within this database that are reserved for students who do have some college credit under their belt. That being said, you make the dean's list at the end of the first semester. Update your profile on FastWeb. You join some new clubs, or you become as a freshman class president, all of that kind of stuff. Continue to update your FastWeb profile as you progress through the ranks. So be diligent with FastWeb, I guess, is the simple way to frame it. Now, I know that at this point, the next recommendation may be a little old. I assume that at this point, many high schools have already had their, unfortunately, virtual senior awards days, but a contact with the high school guidance office, even at this point in the late spring, early summer, would be a good call to make. If a donor is looking to encourage a high school student to go to college where they thought they might not otherwise go because perhaps they thought they couldn't afford it, that donor is going to go to the high school guidance office and not to the college financial aid office. We're kind of after the fact. That we know by the time we get an application, the student has the intent to enroll somewhere. So if the whole intent is to get a student to go to college, that donor is going to look at the high school guidance office and provide them the information. So definitely so worth contact, a little bit of an outreach with the high school guidance office. There are some local groups, Knights of Columbus, Lions clubs, Rotary clubs, etc., that offer on occasion scholarship opportunities. They may be modest, but so what? $500 is $500. So that is also another opportunity. And also on occasion, I'll mention that a parent's place of employment may offer some scholarship assistance to students who are dependents of their own particular employees. So some more opportunities for the families. Final thing that I want to share before I share with you the contact information for your student financial services counselors are dates that you should plant in the back of your brain. Now, not necessary for you to copy these dates unless you feel like it. The reason I say that is very shortly, you'll receive a pamphlet in the mail that will describe these dates for you in written form. But essentially, this is the timeline for both billing and financial aid application to student accounts purposes. Late June, the fall bills are generated. July 1st is the date by which or after which we ask you to look at the master promissory note and the entrance counseling for federal direct loan and Parent Plus loans. Now, one thing that I didn't delve into, but I will mention briefly, are the fact that there are private loans. The loans that I've focused on are federal loans. So typically the interest rates are pretty good. There are lenders, a lot of lenders, who are not just willing but eager to get student loan business because they understand that 4 years hence that you will be a very marketable college graduate. So they're, even though you're 17 or 18-year-olds, they're looking to make loans available to you with obviously a creditworthy cosigner. Now, because we understand that there are so many banks that are looking to get this business and that this could be a rather challenging task to try to determine what's best for my family, what we did on a particular website is called Elm Select. Elm is in the tree, Elm Select, all one word, all lowercase, .com. What we've done is compiled maybe 15 to 17 lenders with which our students have dealt happily and successfully in terms of not just being able to get the loan, but also happily in that there's strong customer service, that the interest rates are desirable and competitive, that kind of thing. So on Elm Select, you can do side-by-side comparisons of what these lenders have to offer. And if you choose to go that route, because perhaps it does beat the federal Parent Plus loan interest rate, that this site also gives you the opportunity to formally apply for the loan through Elm Select. Now, one thing that I'll caution, while you may find a private lender giving you or willing to give you a rate that's lower than either the Plus loan or even perhaps, unlikely, given the new federal subsidized and unsubsidized direct loan, unlikely that it'll beat the just over 2% interest rate there. But one word of caution, there are some safety nets, I guess, built within the federal programs that aren't necessarily built into the private loans. Things like forbearance for unemployment, disability forbearance or forgiveness, that kind of thing, that are attached to the federal loans that aren't necessarily attached to the private loans. So they'll be very clear in their disclosures of what their repayment terms are, what kind of perks they offer relative to if you graduate and you make 10 timely consecutive monthly payments, will drop your interest rate by a percentage point. Those kinds of perks that could be associated with private loans, you can find them all on Elm Select. Back to my original point, I wouldn't encourage you to actually pursue these loans until after the 1st of July. That's when the magic interest rate kicks in. Now, obviously, it's the disbursement date that drives the interest rate, but you have other things to think about now. So don't let making application for a private loan or Parent Plus loan be one of your priorities. Now, I'll be singing a very different song come July. Typically, it's an instant gratification thing where the loans are processed and approved almost immediately, with the exception of the private loans that take a little bit more effort. But there's no real urgency. So if you feel that you're at a point that you should be doing something relative to step that you need to take now from a financial aid perspective? The answer is no. If you did your FAFSA form, and if you haven't already, we'll still accept it from you. You are very definitely on track, and after July 1st is when you start thinking about looking at studentloans.gov and doing that entrance counseling, master promissory note, etc. The fall semester payment plan opportunity opens up at the very beginning of August. You have up until August 13th to enroll in it, and the payments then begin on August 15th, and it's the 15th of every subsequent month for 5 months. The semester's tuition payment or arrangement for payment, and by arrangement I mean maybe a private loan that's been pursued but not yet dispersed, not yet issued and applied to your account, that'll happen on August 17th. Looking far ahead, in late November, the spring bills are generated. We do work on a semester basis for both billing purposes as well as financial aid purposes. So you may recall from your award letter, we split everything half fall, half spring, and here's the full year awards, that kind of thing. So the spring bills go out in November. January 5th, payment is due for the spring semester. Need to enroll in the spring payment plan by the 13th. And then this will bring great joy to you to realize that come before May 1st of 2021, it's time to do your FAFSA again for the following academic year, your sophomore year, if you're a true freshman. So I guess that was my not so clever way of telling you, yeah, the FAFSA is an annual thing. I know that's not welcome news to many people, but yeah, it's something that you do need to do every year. Incidentally, maybe I should have put on this important date slides, the fact that the first time that you can complete a 2021-2022 FAFSA form is October 1st of 2020. So just plant that away. Believe me, you'll get plenty of reminders from the Office of Student Financial Services when that time rolls around. For your viewing pleasure, here are the names and contact information of student financial counselors, much like you were assigned a particular admissions counselor to walk you through the whole admissions process. You will likewise have this financial aid counselor who will work with you, not just through the process for an incoming freshman, but through each of your 4 years of college, or in the case of 5 or 6 year programs, for that entire length and breadth of your college career. This person will get to know you very well. We also chose to list the name of the contact person for all of our graduate students, and more importantly for this audience, students who intend to take advantage of any veterans benefits that they may have won by virtue of their parents' status as a veteran. So Tony Naro is available at your disposal if you have any questions about any kind of Chapter 35 benefits, yellow ribbon, etc. Tony is our definite benefits guru from a veteran's perspective. So that being said, do you have any questions of me or Amy?
We do get a couple of questions, so I'll go through them and hopefully we can answer them all. The first question that I do have is, how do you find out about work-study opportunities, and what's the process of applying for work-study jobs?
Okay, yeah, Workstudy is pretty simple. It's all done through the portal. So once you do have access, and I assume that many, if not most of you do have access to the portal, you'll see that under Student Services section, there is a tab specific to Workstudy. On that tab, and it's very clearly marked as the Workstudy tab, you'll be able to view the jobs that are available. You'll be able to actually apply for those jobs through the portal. And as I mentioned, the process begins very shortly, a couple short weeks, that will be fully loaded with the job opportunities that are available to students. Now, I'll mention, I'm actually glad you asked that question. You can apply for multiple jobs. If there are several jobs out there of interest to you, by all means, have at it. Knock yourself out with those applications. Improve your chances of getting hired.
Great. Thanks, Jane. Another question that came up, we do have some transfer students that are on the session. So one of the questions is, if a student takes less than 12 credits a semester, how does that affect financial aid in regards to what's available if a student is not enrolled in 12 credits?
Okay. Typically, the only source of financial aid that is lost if a student enrolls in fewer than 12 credits, and this isn't all exclusive, but for the most part, any of the Wilkes money, an academic scholarship, a merit award, a need-based award that's based on FAFSA information, Wilkes grants, all require full-time enrollment. Federal grant programs may be surprising to students. Some students, if they're taking just 3 credits, just less than half time, one class, can potentially qualify for federal Pell Grant money. Pennsylvania state grant program, half-time enrollment, which is typically 6 credits. Student loan money, available for 6 credits. Workstudy, full-time only.
Great. Thank you. I'm just going to pose this question because I know that we're getting it a lot on the admissions side too, but with the current situation that we're in, are there any opportunities that you can share in regards to information about additional funding or scholarships available for students that have been affected by the health crisis?
Okay. Yeah, you may have heard a great deal of publicity surrounding a program called the CARES Act. Most colleges and universities throughout the country have received sums of money from the federal government to support students who've been somehow impacted by COVID-19. Now, what the federal government has instructed us to focus that funding on first are students whose educational experience was already disrupted. And by educational experience, I mean their college education was already disrupted by the COVID-19 virus and the disruptions that it's caused on college campuses being forced into going online, for instance. What we have taken, what stance we've taken at Wilkes is this. We've just recently opened up our CARES application to students who were actually enrolled at Wilkes University during this past spring semester. We're evaluating the applications as they are returned. And I can tell you in all honesty that we just started our evaluations, just started getting some of this money out the door yesterday. We're still trying to gauge how big the response will be, how big a volume we'll receive from our students who are currently in the Wilkes University pipeline. If there is an opportunity after their requests are evaluated and honored or declined, then we'll be in a better position to say definitively, we have CARES Act funding remaining for incoming students who are currently enrolled. Now, if you're a transfer student and you were enrolled during the spring semester at a college other than Wilkes, then we would encourage you to contact us because there may be some opportunity depending upon what stance, what approach your particular college took during the spring semester relative to closure, moving online, etc. The incoming freshmen, I guess what I want to remind you about is part of the discussion that we've already had surrounding special circumstance. So while your life may not have been disrupted because of Corona and what it did to your educational experience at the college level, I again hearken back to our note about families' income being impacted. and the special circumstance opportunity that's open to you that may be, that would probably be a more viable option than assuming or hoping to get any funding through the CARES Act. It's more special circumstance considerations.
And then there's one more question. So a lot of folks are curious as to how to start the process and when to start the process about applying for private loans to fund the rest of their balance if they are to choose that route.
Amy, do you want to take a shot at that?
So if you're looking to apply for any additional private loans, what we suggest is after July 1st, because after July 1st, you'll have your bill, you'll be able to look at your bill, see what your balance is, and then be able to judge that and judge whether or not if you wanted to do it in a combination with our payment plan, or if you're looking at the plus loan. So encourage any loans definitely after July 1st. You can call us if you have questions about that too. We can definitely talk you through that. And then also don't forget to use Elm Select for some of those plus loans. Those are recommended loan lenders, and they have a breakout of different interest rates, how to qualify, and even how to apply for it.
Great. Thanks, Amy. Those are all the questions that we do have. I did post the link to the financial aid page, so it also gives you the information to contact and reach out, but there's also additional information there that was covered today. Once again, we thank you for joining us. We know it's a busy time of year and the weather's getting nice too, so hopefully as we get closer to the fall, things start to fall in place for everyone. But we encourage you to join us on some of our other sessions today. We also have our new president who will be joining us on a session on Friday. So we encourage you to come check that out as well. In the meantime, feel free to reach out to your admissions counselor, your financial aid counselor. We're here for you, and we're here to help. So just let us know how we can help you and what we could do to get you in touch with the right person, and we'd be more than happy to help guide you along the way. Thanks for your time. Thanks, Jane. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Thanks.
Please keep us posted on any questions. We'll also be posting this session up on our webpage, and we'll send it out to you as well, so you have access to it if you want to reference any of the slides. And hopefully we can answer your questions from there on. Thank you very much, and have a great day.